Now, let's move on straight now to the next agenda of the day, which is now exactly now 2:30, which is the time it's supposed to be started. And I want to invite the moderator of this session, Thinking Outside the Sink. I like that. I hope it wasn't a typo. Thinking outside the sink. We're so fond of saying thinking outside the box. I'm just saying. Thinking outside the sink, driving sustainable organic pollution control strategies through trade. The moderator is Dr. Henrique, Economic Officer at the UN Trade and Development, UNCTAD. Please put your hands together for Henrique as it carries.
Thanks, Master of Ceremony. It was a great pleasure to be here representing the UN Trade and Development. Not my first time in ALN House, and definitely not my first time in Kenya. Hope to be my fourth time, actually. I hope to come back many more times. This section is going to talk about organic waste, right? Especially how trade can help to drive not organic waste control, but especially how to derive value from it. Like we'll be discussing a lot this subject prior, also with the help of counties and municipalities. And now we'll be discussing with some practitioners who, both in the policy and in the practical, in the project angles, are adding value to organic waste. So, just to give a bit of an idea, most of the organic waste management in the world is commingled, is bundled together with inorganic waste. Let's think households, right? What comes from a house, what comes from a condominium, a compound, a state, is usually mixed together, collected, organized, or in an informal way, and taken to a dump site or to a landfill. This is the hallmark of linearity, right? What we want to have is a more circular organic waste management, where the different fractions of the inorganics and the organics are separated, and value is extracted from each. When we talk about organics and talk about value, you can imagine that you can transform organic waste into protein. You can get organic waste, especially from agriculture, and transform it into fibers, new textiles. You can get organic waste and you can use it as a fertilizer to keep the soils healthy in agricultural fields. You can make compost, sell it. You can make biogas and run our cars and trucks. So there are many possibilities that we are missing today that we can realize with the right tools, goods, and services. Without further ado, I'll start to invite the dear panelists that are joining this session this afternoon. The first of them is our dear Honorable Representative of the East African Legislative Assembly, Françoise Mukiza, who is also the chairperson of the Committee on Agriculture, Tourism, and Natural Resources of EALA. Françoise is also she's a Rwandan national, and she holds a master's degree in gender and development, and is currently a PhD student at the Open University in Tanzania. She has been a member of the Legislative Assembly of East Africa since 2017, and she supports climate adaptation and mitigation measures. She chairs the Committee on Agriculture, Tourism, and Natural Resources, and is an advocate for the draft single-use plastics bill currently being considered by members of the Legislative Assembly. Honorable Françoise, what can you tell us about how organic residues can be used to create wealth in the East Africa region?
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator, Mr. Henrique, for this question that is very important. We are kind of shifting from waste management to organic waste residues management. It's one team, it's one boat we are working with, but now we are going to see how they are beneficial to the East African community. You know how EAC is a huge bloc with now 80 countries, with Somalia being the baby country. For those who don't know EAC as a region, EAC has got 7 organs. One of the organs, because of the interest of time, is the East African Legislative Assembly, EALA in short. We represent, we are 4 of us here. I would like to take advantage of just 1 second for my fellow members to stand up and greet the audience, because what we are doing here is an approach that is common interest. Honorable Mongin, Gideon, and Honorable Machano, please stand up for recognition.
Please.
from Uganda, from South Sudan, and from Tanzania. Thank you very much. Now EAC as a huge block can take advantage in these organic waste residues by transforming them not as recycled, because we want first and foremost to prevent them. The first effort is prevention. But the second one, if we cannot, we can at least to go for the composable. For that, we can make them like, food feed for other domestic animals. That is the first advantage. But as a parliamentary organ that is here, we are going to talk of the laws. For instance, this morning, the previous speakers, I appreciate a lot, starting from the initiators of this Waste is the Wealth initiative at the African level. Allow me to tell you that I was also impressed by this openness to Africa already. Though we are in Kenya, we are in Nairobi, and we can't see many people from abroad, but they are here with the passion. With this, I would like to start by a statement of one of the professors from Zimbabwe. We were talking this morning together. He told me, Francois, I'm interested in waste management, but when I go to Western countries, I'm kind of shocked because of the litter that is here and there. Littering in Africa is like a cancer, or like a cancer. And then he asked me, what about EAC? Mr. Henrik, as a moderator, at the EAC level, we are blessed to have got, we have here partnership. That is goal 17. I can see it's accompanied with the goal number 1, no poverty. We have got partners that are supporting a lot to make sure EAC take advantage of the rich potential EAC has got in terms of the waste management and the economic part they can have as advantage. We are talking of circular economy supported by, for instance, UNCTAD. Thank you very much for the support to EAC. Not only UNCTAD, the UK aid, we can also acknowledge the presence of the UK government in supporting these initiatives. And also, I would like to tell you that at EAC level, we have got the single-use plastic bill, as also joint efforts of the community in partnership with what I can call PPP and PPD. That is private-public partnership or public-private dialogue that is ongoing. Here, it's a good example that we are in practicals. And then I can also mention something very important, Mr. Henrik, about the support to job creation. When we talk of residues management, we're talking of changing the narratives, bringing in new technologies, bringing in the youth on board. I was talking to the young generation here, the Gen Zs here, how they are active and they can, push the things forward. So it's an example of what can be possible as members of parliament if we work together under the East African Business Council, for instance, because we're talking of economy that can be pushed at the level of becoming rich, not only being wealthy, beyond the waste management. We are also pushing ourselves in our pockets. We are becoming rich. We are inciting job employment for the youth. We are also implementing goal number 5 that is outside. When I entered this room, I wondered myself, I can see just goal number 1, I can see number 8, decent work and economic growth. I can see, the other side, but others are outside. So if the moderator says move around, he has a reason. So this is boosting EAC potentials. When we go as for the goals, all of them, they count. What is under the water bodies? We will be talking of Kenya Rivers Commission. Yes, part of the water bodies we have, part of the richness that EAC can take advantage as we move forward from the waste management to organic waste residues management. And then at the EAC level, we have also good practices because we're not just talking. Today, it's a day for implementation of, let me call them obligations. EAC countries are all of them signatories to the conventions that were done internationally. The one of a convention for conservation of biological diversity, that one, and another one on climate change, the framework convention on climate change, whereby Uganda participates actively to the climate change. You have the chairperson of the climate change from Uganda, Honorable Jackie Namongin. She's the leader of the platform we initiated under the assembly, and we work very hard with the council of ministers to make sure what we can take advantage under new technologies, being innovative at the EAC, with no one left behind, with the women on board, with the young generation, with I'm saying kids or children, up to the young boy, the child boy, because when we talk of gender equality, it's no longer the matter of girls and women alone. Even men. This time, gender equality is also a matter. You have to also to push the agenda forward so that the EAC can move forward with the Council of Ministers with this convention they signed to support us, one people, one destiny.
Thank you, Françoise. Regional action is absolutely essential as you represent a very important body, and the colleagues also from the ALA represent various committees that are working on natural resources, agriculture, and also biodiversity protection. Those are common issues across the 7 EAC countries and common issues to the Pan-African continent. You mentioned the SDG 17, Partnerships for Actions, SDG 1, Poverty. It's interesting that the way waste is currently managed, especially organic waste, we are throwing jobs away. Right? We're throwing jobs, landfilling jobs, basically. And we might miss opportunities to deliver on SDG 6, on sanitation and clean water, and also on SDG 12, which is sustainable consumption and production. We can produce things and value out of waste. Thank you. Please remain in your seats for us to keep the panel. I'll then go to our next speaker, who is a representative of the donor of the program I work for, the UK FCDO/UNCTAD Sustainable Manufacturing Environmental Pollution Program, Mrs. Anita Siru, who is an Environment and Biodiversity Officer at the British High Commission here in Kenya. Please, Anita. That's it. Anita is also, she works with environment and biodiversity at the High Commission. She leads a portfolio of strategic activities to support environmental and biodiversity conservation in Kenya. She oversees the UK biodiversity work delivered through the Darwin Initiative, which has funded 96 locally led biodiversity projects in Kenya, and the Blue Planet Fund, UK's £500 million program that supports developing countries to protect the marine environment and reduce poverty. And it also elevates the UK's profile and influence in international environmental negotiations and groups, particularly focusing on marine litter, plastic pollution, and circular economy. And of course, the organic waste and runoffs of this sector have a deep impact on marine ecosystems and also river ecosystems, fluvial waters, for their risks to cause water eutrophication. Anita, what initiatives are you working on across East Africa? Gives a bit of more flavor of your portfolio, and any of them have faced cross-border challenges. I'm eager to hear from you.
Thank you, Enrique. I'm happy to be here. We work on a range of projects across the ecosystem. As you'd mentioned, we have 93, but those are particularly towards environment and biodiversity. One particular project I'd like to mention is one where we're funding Takataka Nimali in conjunction with the Kisii County government. This is a wonderful project because it works together with the county government to find solutions for organic waste, whereby they try to accelerate the process of segregation so that it's much easier and it's much a cleaner job for the waste pickers who come in. And they also try to find solutions for more organic wastes. And then across the Sustainable Manufacturing Environment Program, we have around 11 projects across the ecosystems, working on a diverse range of things. We have one where we turn pineapple fibers into textiles. We have another where we have sustainable fishing nets that in case they get lost in the sea, they can biodegrade. And we have another one where we work with the black soldier fly to produce, compost to get value from compost, animal feed from the plastics that are collected or the kind of litter that comes across. So we have a whole range of projects that we support in different areas. We also have the Global Plastics Coalition program. It's one where we're acting to look through policies and see how we can work towards pollution with local with policy makers. And then there's one of my favorite where we work with the Flip Floppy to come up with all sorts of interesting alternatives to plastic pollution. It's not just creating a dough. The dough itself is a means to speak about policies, to get the interest of policymakers across the region. In terms of implementation, we don't really have faced challenges cross-boundary. What we were discussing with colleagues, we thought that one of the main challenges perhaps would be different interests in countries in terms of like imports in secondhand clothing, perhaps. This perhaps in one country in the region would be a big income generating activity for some people, and in another country, if not handled carefully, would increase, the outflow of waste that would clog our ecosystems going forward.
Thanks for the overview of the many projects funded by the UK, and I imagine that there are many more. Even I could take the whole day. It's very interesting. You mentioned the textiles and how do those connect to the organic waste, right? Once textiles are used and washed every day, that's one of the main sources of microplastics in the world, together with tires. So there are a lot of connections between the systems, especially waterways, because everything we reuse has to use water to get clean again, and then you get organic leachate that goes to rivers and then to oceans. Talking of rivers, I have information that one panel member is online and represents a very important initiative here in Kenya, the Nairobi Rivers Commission. Mrs. Eva Muhia, please confirm, colleagues, if she is online. I believe she is. I'll just read here. Eva Muhia is the commissioner is a commissioner at the Nairobi Rivers Commission, and she'll tell us a bit about how to apply circularity to organic residues and water use. Eva has over 3 decades of experience in sanitation sector. She has worked in various capacities with non-profits and with the private sector towards realizing sustainable and equitable solutions for access and management of sanitation. She is the Chief Executive Officer of Varied Products, a social enterprise that provides sustainable and impactful products, services, and solutions for sanitation and waste management. She's also the founder of the Global Sanitation Environment Project, GSEP, a nonprofit based in Kenya as well, that works towards realizing synergies, efficiencies, and sustainable solutions for impactful interventions in the drive towards universal access to sanitation, a problem that many countries face. Eva, as a commissioner of the Nairobi Rivers Commission, oversees an interesting array of initiatives as part of the commission that are trying to focus on liquid discharge and solid waste, and also revitalization of the Nairobi River. And many regions, by the way, are facing a similar challenge. The Seine in Paris faces a revitalization program, multi-billion euro. The Guanabara Bay in Brazil, and various fresh and saltwater estuaries around the world. Eva, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. Thank you.
We can hear you too. If you can, IT colleagues, if you can just make it a bit louder, you can make your intervention. Thank you.
Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to be in this panel and to represent the Nairobi Rivers Commission. It's a very interesting conversation that we are having here. And sorry, I can't put on my camera. I'm out of town. I'm somewhere in very interior. So kindly pardon me for that. So within the conversation that we're having and to align with the Nairobi Rivers Commission, the Nairobi Rivers Commission, I had one of the panelists talk about the Kenya Rivers Commission. It is Nairobi Rivers Commission on probably scaling it up to Kenya the Rivers Commission. Our role is to look at the coordination of the different part of the sector in regards to our rivers and in regards to the ecosystem and the communities that align and live along the river, the river corridor and the entire basin. We are in 5 counties, and that is Nairobi, Kiambu, Machakos, Makueni, and Kajiado. So looking from the sources of the river to the outlets of the river. So coming to the conversation of organic waste in terms of both solid and in terms of the liquid waste, one of the gaps that we dug deep into addressing this issue is to looking at the literature reviews and what would be the gap that is there, and the gap purely it's a coordination gap. And why do I say that? I'll give a very good example where we have the Marikiti. Marikiti is the biggest open retail market and wholesale market for organic for vegetables, and it produces a lot of organic waste. And at some point, that organic waste has been sought to be an ISO. And in that process of it being an ISO, it was also noted that it could be organic. It can turn into organic fertilizer. And so how do we link this, what is an ISO, to a social economic or to an economic aspect that economic recycling can be able to bring on board a merger of putting 2 different entities to complete that cycle. And one of the most interesting thing was to structure that out and in a coordinated way, where you find this is the product that is the waste, and linking it up to the one who is looking for that waste, and it has gone into different parts. So you find that with those kind of structures, and that's what the Nairobi Rivers Commission is now it is doing, and bringing on board and mapping out these stakeholders from the different perspective to bring them into the table and merge them up and twin them and partner, let them partner so that we are able to have a complete cycle. And in the Marikiti, for the Marikiti conversation, the retail market and the wholesale market that I'm talking about in the right center of the town is now to identify who are these who are farmers who are interested with this waste that is generated from this vegetable waste and the waste that is produced from this market. And we also, in that process, were able to find the number of farmers and how they are able to link and what is left over. How is it now being used? And we've got one company like Synergy. I don't know whether they're in the room, but they started buying the produce buying or asking for permission to get that waste for black soldier flies back in Athi River, where they collect the waste and then it is used for the black soldier fly. So that in itself, it's in different sets of market. And so what we are doing is mapping these markets out and seeing who do we connect, who is in the nearest, and then how do we generate that waste into something that is of value. What's the value chain? There should be, and that is there. Out of that, again, we've realized there's quite a bit of policy gaps and frameworks that needs to guide, and regulations that need to guide this conversation of organic waste, because without clear regulations and the acceptability of that through policy, it would continue being a challenge. So as the Commission, we are putting all these recommendations in terms of policies and mapping. The most important is to map out all these challenges that we are having and that we are. Am I audible?
You are.
Yeah, okay. And seeing how do we connect the conversations of policy and the circular economy towards conversations around organic waste. So going into the liquid waste, my background, like you had before I joined the Commission, I've been in private sector, I think all my life, and I just joined government like 14 months ago, and that's the background. I'm a sanitation expert, and being the sanitation expert, our company we deal in water recycling, like wastewater recycling, and we've seen a lot of that wastewater recycling coming on board. That is the biogas coming from even fecal sludge, and having fertilizer even from fecal sludge, having fertilizer and having the probably the combination of both to produce biogas. There are also challenges around that. We are also now mapping those challenges and seeing what would be the solutions, and borrowing from the South and borrowing from developed countries that are already way up ahead. Like we had the UN Water Forum that were, no, not the UN Water, the World Water Forum happening in Bali, and there was a lot to learn about wastewater recycling using natural methods and natural ways of trying to ensure that it is aligned within the scope of the circular economy. There is one important conversation that we miss, and we've missed quite a bit in terms of the circular economy, and especially in the organic waste: indigenous knowledge. When I was a little girl, I remember like my grandmother's place where I am in the village right now. There used to be, that's the reason why I'm thinking about that. There used to be behind somewhere a dark pit, and it used to, every organic waste is where we would throw. And she would insist, okay, mix a bit of cow dung into it. The next thing we would use that, carry that fertilizer and use it into the garden. And looking at the world today, we have a lot of organic food that is now being recommended for good health and for wellness. So the combination of that too, again, from an organic perspective and from that indigenous knowledge, it's one that we need to also map out and see what were these initial traditional indigenous conversations that were happening around that organic conversation, and why was it being done how it used to be done, and how now do we merge it again with the technologies that are there. Like we have the bacteria enzymes that expedite the process of biodegradation, and how do we now align all this together? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Eva. I really liked your last point on indigenous and traditional knowledge. I often keep thinking about how my grandma used to melt small soap bars that were about to be thrown away into a larger soap bar. Just she put some salt, apparently made the whole thing glue together again. And also that we had in my country, I'm from South America, a clay filter in every house. So we did not drink water from plastic bottles, but we put the water through a ceramic element, and the water came clean down there, and we lived like that, and it worked, and we forgot about that type of technology. So very interesting point. I will use your role and your experience in the private sector to ask you a brief question, Eva. Since you work for the Nairobi Rivers Commission and you're getting experience across the portfolio of actions of this initiative, how can the river basin benefit from the facilitation of technologies and innovations from within the region, so beyond Kenya, to contain solid and liquid waste from being discharged into the river? What kind of goods and services can this initiative need from the broader East Africa or Pan-African region to achieve its goals?
We are looking more at nature-based solutions, and nature-based solutions are within the corridor of what really works within the within the river basin corridor. Why am I saying this? It's because if we look at the riverine communities along the Nairobi rivers, which are the main three rivers, that is Ngong, Nairobi, and Mathare, the two being a tributary of Nairobi River and linking to Athi River all the way to the Indian Ocean. You find a lot of activities within that. Go back again to what I had said about the indigenous and what we need to borrow from that. And the exercise that is being done within these communities, it is what they know from a natural perspective. However, we are looking at also what technology is working. That's why I said, like in the World Water Forum, there was that conversation, wanting to come and say, how do we now look at waste management from a section area, not from a wider perspective. For instance, if you're looking at an informal settlement, you find the sewer runs along the informal settlement, but the sewer is not connected within the communities along the informal settlement. So what decentralized system are there, and do they exist that we can borrow from different countries that have already worked? We don't reinvent a wheel. We don't go through a lot of studies. There's not so much time for that, because we cannot talk about cleaning the rivers without addressing the root causes of what is the challenges within the river. Then we have the Nairobi dam site. That is the biggest dam site we have in Nairobi. It is said it is still contentious about the percentage, but it's above 50%. It is said that 60 to 65 to 70% of the waste that goes to the Dandora, about 60%, let's call it 60%, it is organic waste. So organic waste coming from our homes, coming from our houses. So we are looking also at borrowing the conversations of waste segregation. And now this is where we look at behavior change. Behavior change, and the Nairobi Rivers Commission, we are now committed to involving schools to be part of this conversation, because we all know when you're grown up, it's very hard to change our behaviors. But if we start instilling this, and we are borrowing a lot from other countries within the region and from the south, borrowing what syllabuses do they have in terms of training of waste segregation and manure, those just composting, and now starting to integrate. So right now we're having what we call the climate works that is happening right now, where the youth are getting employment within the river corridor. And these are things that we'll be looking at every 100 meters within the river corridor. Where are they going to be taking the waste, and what kind of waste, and how do we quantify what waste is coming in and what is going out, so that we are also able to assist the main dam site that is, we already know it is already full. So we are putting all these conversations together, because for us to clean the rivers, we first need to stop the waste from getting into the rivers. So once we are able to stop the waste from getting into the rivers, then we can clean the rivers. Otherwise, it will just be a matter of former initiatives that have been there. You clean, it is clean for 1 week, then again you go there back, clean for 1 week. But now we are addressing from that place. Waste segregation, organic waste, recycled, upscaled products, looking at every waste as it is and saying, how do we now move and at a section and at a zoned level? Thank you.
Thank you, Eva. And you touched on many points, the indigenous communities. You touched also on the issue of decentralized systems, and it made me think that a lot of the systems are getting decentralized, energy generation, banking, telecommunications, and you also water and waste treatment solutions. It's a very interesting trend across the world. I got notice that we have interesting comments also from participants online. Thank you, Peter, from the Africa Circular Economy Network. He mentions that it's worth to explore how a better organic waste management is directly contributing to cleaner recyclable streams. So recyclables that are easier to recycle, making them cheaper to deal with. I think that's in the core essence of this section here. The fractions need to be separated, ideally the early stage of the upstream, and not once they're already mixed, right? And I think that affects the work of all the interventions here. Without further ado, and I'll get straight into another one that connects really well, is the perspective of Dr. Jane Nyakango, who is the CEO of the Kenyan National Clean Air Production Center, a project partner of UNCTAD and the SMAP program. Jane is the CEO of KNCPC. She also holds a PhD in environmental policy, a master's in environmental science and technology, and has over 30 years of experience as a team leader and expert in environmental and social safeguards, environmental policy, and also climate change. She acts as a trainer, policy analyst, and practitioner. She is a registered safeguard expert with NEMA here in Kenya and also with REMA in Rwanda, trained by the World Bank. She is also She was also the vice chair of the Environmental Sustainable Land and Natural Resource Management Technical Working Group of the Agricultural Sector Coordination Unit of Kenya's Ministry of Agriculture. Jane, enlighten us a bit with your experience from the Kenya National Clean Air Production Center, which is one of the key bodies, right? You have similar sisters in other countries in East Africa and beyond. But we were together, by the way, in a meeting last week discussing water treatment solutions for different types of manufacturing sites. So Jane is definitely an expert in this subject. Jane, the microphone is yours.
Thank you, Chair, for your warm welcome. Yeah, as he has explained, for the last almost 30 years, I have been working as a pollution prevention expert or technical advisor to industries under the Kenya National Cleanup Production Center. And the Kenya National Cleanup Production Center is one of the almost 70 global national cleanup production centers we have. And these centers are found in those countries, developing countries and those economies with countries with economies in transition. And where we find that the cleaner technology infrastructure and capacity is not sufficient to guide the enterprises to prevent pollution, to valorize whatever waste that is generated and they treat before they discharge. We have Uganda Cleaner Production Center, we have Tanzania Cleaner Production Center, we have Rwanda, and we have a cleaner production unit in Burundi. And we've been working together both in regional projects and national projects. So really what we do is we train industries and businesses and other organizations on how they can look at their process operations and be able to put in place cleaner technologies and techniques that can first and foremost prevent or minimize the release of pollution into the environment. So the first thing is that we look at those industries or businesses, what technologies, appropriate technology can they put in place? And after they have prevented as much as possible, then the next line of intervention is what kind of technologies can they also use to valorize the whatever waste, whether it's waste to energy, whether it is waste to other valuable items. That's the space we play in. And to bring this matter into perspective, we have in the last 1 year started implementing a program with under the Sustainable Manufacturing and Enterprise Pollution, which is supported by UNCTAD and FCDO. And why has this project been found necessary? It is within the Nairobi Rivers Basin. And here to inform you, it is the Nairobi Rivers. There's more than one river, so that's why we say the Nairobi Rivers Commission. So what Commissioner Eva Muhia was talking about is very dear to us. So, and we are working with the businesses within the Nairobi Rivers Basin to prevent the release of industrial and institutional pollution in the river. And one of the challenges that we find is, first and foremost, is technology, cleaner technology, availability and access to cleaner technology. Availability speaks to the right technology being available and access, the financing being there. So those challenges, so the project has been designed such that those challenges are being addressed within the project implementation. And now that takes us to actually trade in cleaner technologies. If you look globally, trade in cleaner technologies has increased, from about by 60% from, let's say, 2006 to last year, by 60 to 70%. Whether it is across continents, whether it is within the continent, there's a lot of trade going on. Whether it is on equipment that is supposed to generate renewable energy, waste to energy, reduce, water consumption, and so on and so forth. So we find that we therefore have had to engage or partner with the relevant partners to address these barriers. One, there's a company or companies that promote membrane technology. Membrane technology to treat the wastewater to a level that you can reuse it for whatever purposes that you'd like to put that into. And this is local technology, actually made from recycled reverse osmosis membranes. This is the process that treats the water that we drink or water that is used in high, precision industries like injection water and stuff like that. So that's a locally available technology. But there are instances where you find that we have to get technology from either the region, like in this case it's south north. So we are getting support from countries in the south, but also countries in the north, so that together we combine and get the kind of technology that can be able to solve our problems. So what then is how are we working on the issue of access to finance or access to technology? That's the financial barrier. We brought in another partner who is helping us once we assess the industries, determine the kind of technologies that they're supposed to implement to either reduce the pollution generation. Can be organic waste, a lot, in fact 70% is organic waste. These measures, this financial services provider converts or packages the environmental solution problem or technology, converts into an investment proposal. Investment proposal, which then we are able to engage with the financial institutions to access private or commercial funding. And so this financial service provider has developed a credit appraisal model that companies can use to be able to assess themselves on whether they can be able to access credit from commercial banks and other blended financing, but also a model that helps financial institutions, that like banks, to be able to lend to these institutions or these industries and enterprises to be able to buy that technology, implement, and therefore be able to reduce the pollution. How is SMEP helping? The SMEP grant is helping because some of the technologies have not been tested. And banks, until it's been tested and it's a common like wastewater treatment plant, which is known, if it's a technology that's going, for example, to help reduce organic pollution from a tannery, unless it's been tested and found working somewhere, they don't touch. So SMEP is helping us to pilot those technologies to demonstrate that indeed they work and therefore are attractive to financing by the banks, and also that we can actually do a scale up. So for the Nairobi rivers, what are we looking at? We are saying this is a small pilot project, which is basically it is like is a catalyst, and out of this, can we then scale it up to cover the more than 4,000 enterprises that we have within the Nairobi rivers basin? So the challenge we have, therefore, is to scale up from the few industries, the about 100 or 200 industries that we are working with, to 4,000. And until and unless we do that, you are going to find that the desired water quality for the Nairobi rivers will not be realized. Finally, it's on the policy. We find that even as industries are taking on board the cleaner technologies, we do not have appropriate incentives to be able to encourage them to continue with the adoption of cleaner technologies. So we are asking that if we can have a real look at our Environmental Management and Coordination Act, we are we also also looking at the Finance Act in terms of rebates and so on and so forth. But now, moving beyond Kenya, we had wanted this project to be regional, to cover the East African community countries, because we know they have similar challenges. We worked on the same within the Lake Victoria Basin Commission, the 5 countries, and we are hoping that this can actually be scaled up, first to cover the entire basin, Nairobi Rivers Basin, but also to go to the other East African community countries, because the challenges are the same. Yes.
Thank you. We have a right panel to discuss regionalism as well later on in the questions. I really liked your intervention, Jane, also because you touched on at least 2 points of trade, the trade in technologies like the membrane tech that you mentioned, which is very efficient to filtrate water. And also you mentioned the financing models like trading capital, which are needed to scale up basically anything, especially manufacturing. But the Kenya National Cleaner Production Center is not like it's working with the water filters at my home or a small composting unit in your backyard. You're working with large companies and with large sites. Imagine that decantation tanks to clean water from industries would fit the size of this room, or at least. So since you're working with very large projects, you trade of products. I mean, you cannot pack it in a box and ship it to another country, right? Or receive it in Kenya, a pre-canned solution. You need very skilled people to operationalize, construct, plan, deploy, monitor. Just a quick question. How do you see trade and service, especially skilled professionals in that equation? The Cleaner Production Center, how do you stimulate or work with human capacity to be able to deploy those projects?
Yeah, there's a serious need in terms of capacity building. And that's where we are looking at. One of the things actually we're looking at within the Nairobi Rivers Basin is that we need international partners. International partners, first to help us build the local capacity, to be able to assemble, design even and assemble some components of some of those technologies, but also to be able to manage them, to run them and to be able to service them when they require to be serviced. So I'm looking at support for capacity building, support for R&D as well. So we need some of the research institutions like Kenya Industrial Research and Development Institute to be able to be capacity built to support the industries in terms of that managing the technologies. But also we also need support to be able also to vet some of the technologies, because there are those ones that you find that they are claimed that they will do ABC, they are magical, but when that's from testimony from the company's businesses. But when you use them, you find that, it was actually not what it was claimed. So we have a lot of need as a country, and I know as a region, because for the last 15 years I've been coordinating a regional project within the EAC region, and these similar challenges persist. The way we do like now quality control of various other products, we also need to quality control the kind of technologies that we would need for managing waste, organic waste. And, in our region, 70% of our waste is organic. So really, for me, I see a big opportunity for UNCTAD and other players to partner with us.
Thank you, Jane. And when I entered university, very few people were interested in any waste or circularity or recycling, and it's very nice to see that nowadays you see in universities, and I work with a couple of them, more and more master's, PhD thesis focus square on that. Before, everybody wants to work with finance, right, with banks. Now they want to work with things that are green. We got a question from the audience, or a very interesting comment from the audience, saying or stating, how about polluter pays principles, like initiatives like providing advice, like carrots, right? Advice, networking and structure, like the NCPC is doing to Kenyan manufacturers, is one thing, but there's also a stick. Like, so polluter pays. We need to incentivize clean production, but also punish polluters to disincentivize them from doing so. Government enforcement is necessary. I think it was an interesting comment raising it here. But without further ado, let's go to our last panel member. Introduce him. He is Mr. James Boyd Moss, who is a mechanical engineer with expertise in the field of natural fibers. He's the founder of Mananasi Fiber, a company specializing in the extraction of fibers from pineapple plant waste. I've had the honor to visit their sites, which sits near a very large pineapple plantation, I believe run by Del Monte, where they get the pineapple leaves, which do not have a very good economic usage for them. They are usually burnt and transform through a series of structured process those leaves into cottonized fiber, which can be spun with cotton into new garments. It's a fascinating tech, really transforming waste into wealth. James, give us a bit of a flavor of the realities of implementation and financing of waste upgrading. What do you face as an entrepreneur?
Thank you very much, Enrique, and thank you for the opportunity to talk here. Ava earlier brought up some traditional knowledge, so I might just touch on a little bit of that as well, because my journey in natural fibers actually began with a smallholder farmer showing me how to extract fibers from a sisal leaf, which he very quickly wove into a rope that he was tethering his goats with. And so as a young boy, I very quickly saw how a very useful material can be extracted from a mere leaf. And if you were to fast forward 20 years, I found myself working in the sisal industry to produce machinery to automate the extraction of these fibers. And in doing so, I started thinking about other natural fibers. And one of those fibers is pineapple fiber. And the traditional method for disposing of pineapple plant waste, which is the plant of the pineapple fruit. Once the pineapple has been harvested, it's no longer useful, and for generations, this plant has been knocked to the ground. It's been considered an organic waste and an impediment to planting the next cycle of pineapples. And so what's been done is it's been left to dry in the sun, and then it's been burnt, which represents a massive opportunity loss. And if you look at a plantation such as Del Monte, which is where we're based, they produce about 1,200 tons of organic waste per day, which is an enormous amount of material. And the incineration of it not only costs the company money, it's an opportunity loss in terms of employment, and it's obviously a bit of an environmental disaster with regards to the emission of pollutants, as well as the fires baking the soil, and reducing the nutritional content of the soil, which further impacts the next generation of pineapples. And so in my research, I came across this situation that there is on pineapple plantations, and then I also found out about pineapple fiber, which was originally made use of in the Philippines, and there are some traditional garments that have been made there for a very long time. But what we've done at Mananasi Fiber is we've taken these automatic decorticators, which extract fiber at a large scale, and we've applied them to the pineapple feedstock. And so one of the first challenges that we came up against was convincing anybody that this was in fact a good idea. And we tried convincing Del Monte, and lo and behold, they thought it was a pie in the sky idea, which is where SMEP came in. And so in terms of facilitating an idea, we're incredibly grateful to SMEP. They've allowed us to realize our dream, and we've set up a little pilot project on Del Monte where we're utilizing about 2.5% of their waste to produce pineapple fiber. with the intention that we can demonstrate a concept which which not only Del Monte but other large-scale producers of pineapple fiber can take on in order to take this waste product and to valorize it. I'd also like to mention that it's got applications beyond pineapple, and I bumped into Samuel earlier from Ziada Solutions, and he's looking into a very similar concept for banana. So what we're looking to do is to demonstrate a proof of concept not only for pineapple but also for other crops that hold these fibers in a way that we can turn a huge amount of organic waste into a useful product. I'll touch on the product itself as well. So pineapple fibers are used in the textile industry, and it's obviously a very low impact material for clothing. Enrique mentioned microfibers, microplastics, and the pollution problem that clothing results in. And pineapple fiber is a very useful alternative because it's biodegradable, and if it does find its way into landfills, it has a lower impact than other solutions. I'll also touch on some of the challenges going forward as well in terms of trade, because at the end of the day, what pays the bills is the revenue that we generate from the fiber that we produce, and that depends on there being a market for pineapple fiber. At the moment, the main markets are in Asia. So we're selling to Vietnam at the moment, but also Taiwan, and then elsewhere. Spain also have a market for pineapple fiber, but it is very much in its infancy. And when we come to export it or to send samples, we have challenges in terms of getting this unknown product out into the world. So in terms of HS codes, it's one area where we've had problems whereby samples have been held up in facilities purely because nobody knows what they are, and the code that's attached to them makes no sense to anybody. So I think in terms of trade, that's somewhere where we could definitely get some assistance. Going forwards, the other thing that we really need is volume. So these fibers, in order to make an impact and to actually be of any use in the world of textiles, there needs to be an enormous amount of them out there available for use. So to give you an idea, at the moment our facility is producing about 200 kilograms of pineapple fiber per day. But if you were to look at an industrial sisal plantation here in Kenya, they might be producing 30 tons of fiber per day. So that's really where we need to get to. And again, SMEP have done a fantastic job in providing that seed finance to demonstrate a pilot concept, which should, in theory, be the evidence for big corporations such as Del Monte to take the concept on and to push it forward.
Thank you, James. The fiber sector, it plugs into a very large industry, like textile industry worldwide. And I had the honor to be in Bangladesh with the textile spinners who were blending pineapple and banana fiber into their cotton garments. And yes, well heard regarding the HS codes. That can be complicated because the fibers look very similar to each other once they are dry. The physical distinction of the product can be very challenging for a customs official. I just got word that one of our panelists from the Nairobi River Commission, Eva Mohia, might leave very soon. Eva, are you still around? If you're around, do you have any message for others in the EAC that may wish to clean up their river basins?
Thank you. Yes, is to look at each other's lessons learned. That would be important, because either way, from the Lake Basin, there's a lot to learn from that, and there's also a lot we are learning from that, looking at the literature review we've been looking into. But most importantly, there is need now to map out the technologies that have been in existence for a while, to look at those that have worked and the lessons learned, to also look at those that were discontinued, the reasons why. Was it because there was no capacity in terms of knowledge? Was it because the systems did not work because they did not match up to the geographical or the conditions of the soils or whatever it would be? Or why didn't they work? Because we keep on introducing new technologies without first looking at what is existing. We are still going to face a bit of further challenges way much ahead. So we are looking at the Nairobi Rivers Commission has that one central platform where we can be able to see how do we consolidate all these efforts and all these technologies that have existed. Like, for instance, in Nairobi, we just learned that we have over 145 decentralized technologies that have existed. Some failed. Some are even using biogas in the informal settlements. We have like Commander Trust, that the biogas, those that live in the informal settlements, they come and cook using the biogas, and it's from organic waste. And they have had challenges. So what are these challenges? How can these challenges be overcome? Can it be scaled up? And as we are introducing other refined technologies that are coming on board, that would be very important. And that platform that maps all these, and that there is data that we can be able to draw from if you want to know lessons learned. And also we are able to share with other aligned ministries that they may continue having these conversations, but that is much needed, especially for the region in East Africa. If we had every country having that central place where all these technologies can be looked at. One of the speakers said that there are technologies that when the marketing aspect and approach to it is very good, but when it comes to the actualization of that technology working at this probably geographical space, it becomes quite a challenge that it does not take off. And we have had a lot of fear that has built a lot of fear with stakeholders who would be willing to try these technologies, but because of that experience keep on backing them out and saying probably this is another wrong move that we are about to get ourselves into. So having that consolidated data space where we can know and understand all these technologies and where they're coming from, what they have done and where they have worked and why not, would be very important. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Eva, for sharing your knowledge. And please don't be angry with me if I route out other river basins initiatives like the Mekong or the Guanabara Bay to talk to you. I think it will be a very interesting example. By the way, we could even support such a dialogue in the future. Let me just thank you, Eva. I know that you need to go, so feel free to disconnect or continue if you want, if you can. I would like to open the floor for questions, especially from the 60 participants who are online. Please paste on the chats there or on your connection if you have any questions, but also from the physical audience here in ALM. So the floor is yours. Raise your hand, identify yourself, we'll get a mic to you. Organic waste is part of our lives, so I'm sure you have questions. Do we have a question online? I have a question, but I prefer to pick. Well, I'll search for a victim here. What is a hand? Oh, sorry, Honor Guido.
Thank you very much. My name is Gideon Gatpand, a member of IELA. So let me ask Mr. James, the entrepreneur who is doing a great job by venturing on the pineapple fiber. This is an organic waste. My question is, how do you generate or create a demand for it for countries or companies which may be interested, and how do you create awareness about what you are doing? Because now you are only exporting to a few countries, let's say 3 or 2, but there are countries which are also producing, making product out of this of fibers, other fibers, but they may not be aware. So, what is your strategy to expanding or widening the market for this kind of product of material or the raw material? My second question, I think, is about the conversion, the technology that is involved in trying to get the fiber to be accepted as export by those countries. Is it an expensive thing, or it is something affordable? Taking the context of the East African people, is it affordable? Is your technology something that can be adopted or transferred easily to other parts of the region, so that our people can be able to venture into that kind of productive business? Thank you.
Thank you, Gideon. With your first question in terms of access to market, at the moment we're primarily accessing the existing pineapple fiber markets, which are in those countries that I mentioned earlier, Vietnam, Spain, Taiwan, Thailand, where they have experience in terms of dealing with pineapple fiber. The one issue that pineapple fiber comes up against with regard to turning it into fabrics is that it has a long staple length, which means it's a long fiber, which when you compare it to polyester fibers or cotton fibers, they're much shorter. And so the technology, the mainstream technology that exists worldwide is primarily geared towards cotton and polyester. And so, and in fact, it's an exercise that we've done. We've taken our fibers to Thika spinning mills and we've put them on the table in front of them, and they look at it, and there's nothing they can do with it. So there are some additional steps which go into the fiber. It's a cottonization process where they basically chop it up chop it and fluff it such that it conforms to the properties of cotton. And then what can be done is it can be blended with cotton, and then a yarn is produced, which is usually 20 or 30% pineapple fiber, and then the remainder is cotton. So that there is in fact, the company that we're selling our fiber to, they just do that one value add step, and they call it ready to spin fiber that they produce. So they take our fiber, they put it through this cottonization process, and then it's essentially in a state that's that makes it conform to cotton, and so that it can be used in the same spinning mills as regular cotton and polyester. So I think that's really the next challenge, is to incorporate that additional value add step, and at that point the fiber would be able to make its way into Kenyan, Ugandan, Tanzanian spinning mills. But I think at the moment the proof of concept is to produce the fiber, to demonstrate that the business model is viable, and then these additional technologies can be bolted on. With your second question, which was about the extraction machinery, so that that we've actually designed and built in country. So it's all of the components have been machined by manufacturers within Nairobi, and then we've assembled them, tested them, modified them to get to the model that we're using today. And in terms of cost, it's really not enormous. We expect, we haven't put any machines on the market, but if they were to go on the market, they might be around, retail price might be around, $40,000 or $50,000 for a machine, where the real costs in terms of the business model come in from operations, which is it's a very good thing, because the solution produces a huge amount of employment. There's a lot of labor that's required for harvesting the leaves. There's labors required for loading them into trucks, bringing them back to the factory, putting them through the machinery, laying the fibers out onto drying lines, brushing them, baling them. So, in fact, if we were to look at the Del Monte example, if the concept were to be scaled to utilize 100% of their available waste, it might produce, it might create 1,000 to 1,500 jobs, which, when you compare to their entire labor force of 6,000 people, it's a significant creation of labor. So in terms of people that are looking to adopt the strategy, the costs really come in when it comes to labor and the logistics of moving this huge amount of material around.
Thank you. As you could notice, both Honorable Gideon and James are engineers, and very good questions. I was myself surprised by the tech development process of the machinery there, and especially how the cotonization process transformed a dry, rough fiber into something that like magic, something like cotton. It's really impressive, the tech. I know we needed to finish a bit earlier, but we got a question from the audience from Mrs. Jennifer Wang, a waste management specialist. She asks Honorable Françoise, what more do you think the East African community could do to promote and make trade easier to facilitate the right technologies spreading across the regions? I think she meant the right technologies to control organic pollutants. Honorable Françoise, please.
Thank you very much. The question is quite interesting, because we are moving in an era of circular economy. And with the circular economy, we have to mention some technology that are used at the EAC level so that they can understand what we are talking about. EAC, let me call them farmers, but also some of them are still at the experiential level, like composting. They do that at the field, biogas production, vermicomposting, thermal decomposition, gasification. These are technologies, new technologies, waste to energy, whereby we can find renewable energy. And this is also an initiative that is undertaken by EALA, because we already moved the motion to make sure partner states bringing the energy that can be utilized and affordable and accessible to everyone, and the energy that is not, driving charcoal, those things that are harmful to the climate change adaptation. Then we call it energy recovery. Waste to fertilizer. We are talking of circular economy, but in terms of organic waste, residues management. Then we're talking of nutrient recovery from the environment protection, waste to bioplastics, where we find, single-use plastic bill. We are going to work on together, of course, with all of you inputs, because we will hear from you the time will come, and we invite all of you to, for the public hearings next time. Biodegradable materials, those are part of the technology that are being used. Waste to biofuels. They are also to know that they are very important. For instance, in Rwanda, there is an effort to grow plants that can generate fuel. I don't know if you are aware of that. So something new, like we were just impressed by the fiber from, pineapple. I don't know if it's leaves or fruit or roots, I don't know from where, but maybe having said that, we are, Henrik, through UNCTAD and also ALN, all these efforts, Takataka Mari, all the initiatives we want to take us, everyone here present, because seeing is believing. We should come from these theories. We are talking of, biofuel, bioplastic, to the field, to ascertain what Mr. James is saying, that is true, because these technologies offer sustainable status for managing, emerging organic waste residues, and also boost trade at the East African community. And IALA plays big role because our three functions, core functions, are legislation, oversight, and we represent EAC citizens. By representation, we talk of people-centeredness, because the EAC, the seventh article of the treaty for the establishment of the East African community talks of people-centeredness and also market or private sector-driven community. That's why we are here. And the person who asked a question mentioned the trade part of it. Trade part of it is joint efforts by partner states, but also harmonization of policies. But beyond all of those things, enforcement is a problem. You have heard from the previous speakers in the morning, the governor and the team, the entire team, they said, we have beautiful regulations, framework, we have beautiful laws here in Kenya, but the problem implementation. And they may implement, but enforcement is also part of punishment. We may enforce fines where need be. Like the other bill of single-use plastics, they provide for sanctions. You may be surprised if you have in the treaty for the establishment of the East African community sanctions, but are not enforced, some of them, and we cannot get, for instance, obligations, partner states, complying to their obligations on time because sanctions are not enforced. So enforcement is the key to boost intra-trade towards AFCFTA. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable. So we are running a bit short in time. I would ask two final questions, one for potentially targeted answers, one to the representative of the UK, Anita. So Anita, what is the goal of your government around biodiversity in Kenya? And if you mind also developing, what is the connection between the UK's work on biodiversity and the UK's work on pollution? So keep that in your mind. And Jane, my question to you will be, how is the Cleaner Production Center of Kenya cooperating with the other East Africa Cleaner Production Centers in order to share best practices? Anita, we'll start with you.
Thank you, Enrique. Our work on biodiversity ranges across diverse ecosystems, diverse interests, from the oceans all the way to the inland lakes, all the way to the savannas. But in this context, we would look a lot on the effect of wastewater on biodiversity, because there's a strong correlation between the two. Because once wastewater gets into these systems, then the businesses would directly experience loss. So we have a new program under the Blue Planet Fund that's called Oceans, and a number of Kenyan organizations have put in proposals. And one that's close to my heart is one that's looking at wastewater systems, because once when I was down in Mombasa, we took a tour of the marine park, the Mombasa Marine Park, and you could see all this industrial affluent or even things from the sewage going directly into the ocean, and people are there having a good time, and you wouldn't notice it, and then they take you there directly. So there are all these industries coming up, there are all these projects coming up, but nobody is really thinking about wastewater systems. So this new project, I hope it goes through. We hope to look at how policymakers, business people can be sensitized more on the effects of this industrial effluent into the marine ecosystems. Because the problem with chemical effluents is that there isn't enough evidence to support, because the effect of this builds over time. So we hope to work with people, we hope to work with businesses, particularly for business. My word for businesses would be, at least for everybody, to come up with some concrete strategy on wastewater management, and also work very closely with professional bodies like UNEP and UNCTAD, perhaps work with scientific people in there to get to understand more, because the more that biodiversity is affected, this has an indirect relation on business outputs, because so many businesses, especially agribusiness, pharmaceutical businesses, all depend on the biodiversity to some point, because pollutants to some level will contribute perhaps to the death of biodiversity. So where are we going to get the natural resources to support our businesses in the long run? So these are the things we are trying to look at. But I think what's missing in the area, there's limited information out there on the effect of this wastewater system, wastewater affluent on biodiversity. Because if you have losses in the ecotourism area, if you have low marine or corals coming up, what will the tourists come to see? So if you have stunted growth, perhaps in the agribusiness, you have low outputs. Where are you going to get, like, perhaps raw materials, in the car sector to come up with leather for the seats and rubber and so on? So there's a very strong correlation in there. So we're working to support policy and also to advocate more for people to understand, especially businesses, the effect of these chemicals on biodiversity.
Thank you so much, Anita. The problem of water, affects also the microbiome of soils and water, right? Affecting agriculture and the viability of crops. Jane. Yeah.
Have a mic. So how do we collaborate with the other cleaner production centers in the region? First is that we're all set up by the same mother and father, in the sense that historically, the way we are established, it was after the 1992, the Rio Summit, that if you look at Agenda 21, Global Agenda 21, there was the call for UNEP and UNIDO to come together, and then the respective national governments to set up national cleaner production centers, to build national capacity for pollution prevention, to engage in policy advocacy and dialogue so that we can mainstream preventive strategies into our national policies. So to that extent, we have always worked together with our cleaner production centers in the region to jointly develop projects and implement, to exchange also technical capacity. Like we have had cases where we find that the cleaner production auditors ourselves from Kenya, we work with industries in Uganda. The Ugandan, our counterparts also cross over, come to Kenya, and the same for Tanzania, Rwanda, and Burundi. And so we have found that sharing expertise has helped in terms of actually changing the behavior and the operations of the businesses towards much more greener and cleaner enterprises. And in the process, we have developed a regional strategy for green financing, which is it's there. We are looking at how we can operationalize that. We've also had a joint regional resource efficiency and cleaner production awards for best performing enterprises that are able to prevent whether it's wastewater generation, pollution, solid waste generation, greenhouse gas emissions. So we actually assess the industries, we rank them, and we give them recognition awards. And why are we doing that? We are doing that so that at least we can bring, to the fore the cleaner production or pollution prevention pays. There's a question that came there, that why are we not emphasizing the polluter pays principle? The polluter pays principle, we find that it's not attractive to the industries, the companies, because they always find ways of trying to evade that. And they have told us to our face that, they can come, but we'll fight. The regulators can come, but we'll fight. So then we advance this approach where both the industry wins and then wins by preventing the industry will win in terms of reduced costs of environmental compliance, and also the environment is protected. So it's a win-win. So we find that when we recognize the best performing industries in terms of compliance, in terms of pollution reduction, regionally, it has an impact of creating that awareness, but also attracting more partners into that program. We've also developed a regional strategy on circular economy using the approach of industrial symbiosis, where these industries exchange waste, and we even have had to help industries within the region source waste from, like now, companies in Kenya sourcing waste from Rwanda to be able to power the operations. Because you find that in an area here like in Ruaraka, you find it's a recycling industrial hotspots. In other words, they receive a lot of waste. And sometimes when they do not have enough, they'll call on us, where can we get this? So we call our partner in Rwanda, can we get this type of plastic waste? Can we get this type of, maybe things like even from sugarcane, can we get this? Or molasses for industrial, to power our distilleries. So, therefore, I would say that it's like we are brothers and sisters. We have a joint, platform where we meet. We used to meet annually when resources could, allow. And we are hopeful that out of even what we are doing now within the Nairobi rivers, we can be able to replicate it in these countries. So it all depends on the availability of resources. But we find that because the industry sectors in the region, they are more or less similar. So you find that an industry like in Rwanda, which is like now using a certain technology to reduce its organic pollution, the similar industry here in Kenya would benefit from that. And so the centers have really helped. And even many times the regulators, the National Environment Management Authorities, have come to request us if we can also help build the capacity of the inspection, the compliance and enforcement officers to be able to have this approach of the pollution prevention pays approach, so that businesses are more and more moving towards voluntarism, voluntarily introspecting, knowing where to change and what kind of technology to have in place. So because of the common market, the ESC, the common market, we find that if you do only in Kenya and leave out the others, again, the impact is not as good as if all the countries can promote the same strategies.
Thank you, Jane. I like the term pollution prevention pace approach. Very good. Just a few notice. We acknowledge that there are some comments online that we could not answer, and also acknowledging the great work of UNIDO and UNEP also in this space, including supporting the National Cleaner Production Centers. I would ask for a round of applause to our panel members. Master of Ceremony, this session is concluded. Thank you.